definitely a great day of sailing conditions. A lot of people wiping out, but that's okay, and that's part of it. We got a lot of starts and a lot of races in. Great. So just a couple of things. We need to make sure that the docks stay clear. We had a lot of people gathering on the dock. If you're going to be on the dock, be on your boat or be leaving the dock or coming to the dock, because we won't be able to keep doing these, and that's a big part of everything. I appreciate the commentary water on the VHF, but if you have any suggestions or that please see land or come by the we don't need these on the radios. We are paying attention to what's going on. We can't just move things and change things, and being practice races and things, we're in 10 lines, and we understand what is going on out there. So if we can just stay off the radio, that'd be appreciated. We're gonna let Kristen Berry jump in real quick and make some comments about tomorrow with the data. We have some trackers you can use, and then talk real quick about the rest with using charted sails for some part of the debrief tomorrow. So Chris, real quick.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. I appreciate you guys inviting me to participate in this, and really excited to be supporting all the teams. My apologies for not being able to grab trackers and Velocitech data today. We're just a little behind the curve, but we'll be all set up for that tomorrow. So we have 5 trackers that we can place on boats. Feel free to shoot a note in the chat if you're somebody who doesn't have a Velocitech and would like to receive one of those trackers. We'll get that sorted out. Otherwise, if you have a Velocitech, you can find me tomorrow. I'll set up like a little workstation probably off the tailgate of my truck at the head of the dock tomorrow, so that you can walk up. I'll take your Velocitech, I'll pull your data. We'll be able to get your data from today and from tomorrow pulled down, so we can push that into charted sails and then be able to add that component to tomorrow's debrief. Very excited to bring this information into play. I think it's going to be a useful tool for us and something that we can use for coaching going forward. So glad to be a part of it, and look forward to pulling everybody's data tomorrow. Again, if you have questions, hit me with a direct message in the chat or in a group, post it up in the overall chat, and I'll be happy to answer anything you've got. Thanks.
Great. All right. Thanks, Kristen. And we had up there today doing some drone work, and Greg Fisher doing some, and Greg has the both. Greg, you can go ahead and start up and go over some things. If you have questions, ideally just put it in, and then Greg will pause for a second. We can take those questions and then answer those. So any questions, that type of thing, just do to everybody or to myself. Don't do it just to Greg, because he's going to be talking, and so he may miss it. So I'm going to let Greg go ahead from here, and anything questions, just shoot them in the chat room. So Greg, go ahead and start showing us some of the things that you learned today on the water.
Okay. Well, thanks, Ed. Well, first, we all owe Ed a big thank you and appreciation for what you're doing to make these things happen. I think we all know how much we miss sailing, and all your efforts to put this together and coordinate it with the club is really cool, Ed. So that's really great. And Kristen, you with the trackers, that will be really cool. And Roy Ingham is going to do a lot of great drone video for us in the future. He got some today. We had a couple little drone hiccups that he's going to get all fixed up for tomorrow. And I think a little bit of that had to do with the breeze we had today. But Ed said it right when he just said, hey, Greg's going to talk about what I learned today. And whenever we go out on a day like today, we always are going to learn something new. And I learned a ton. And I'm not going to pretend to say this is the way it should be done, or this is what I think. I'm really looking forward to you guys using the chat room, as Ed pointed out, and please put your questions or put your additions, or even, I'd love to open it up so you guys can talk, because there are a lot of super sailors here on this call looking at the names that know a lot more about it than I do. And I just would like to consider myself the moderator for this. We did get some decent video, not as decent as we were hoping with the waves and the spray and the bouncing around, but hopefully we'll learn some stuff from it. We focused a lot on some boat handling stuff, on some starting stuff, which obviously we all spent a lot of time doing, and obviously boat speed stuff too. We got some good footage of that. And we try to get shots of everybody doing really good stuff because it was a tricky day and it was challenging. So I'm going to start off, and let me see if I can share my screen just right. And so let me see this. Let me pull this up. There. Are you guys seeing that okay? Everybody see that video?
Looks good, Greg. Yeah, I'm seeing
Okay,
it. on my
okay,
end.
good.
I'm muted, see it.
Okay, great. So I want to start off by saying, and I forget who I was talking to today that said, man, you know, you could be pretty fast upwind. You might even be a little bit off the pace. But if you get around the top mark and you do a nice job downwind and you don't wipe out and you don't have issues, the amount of boats you can gain. And then he talked about the boats that he watched gain literally dozens of boats because they were really on their game is huge. So I wanted to try to pick out some shots of people doing some really good stuff. And it's kind of cool. Surge really had their boat handling down. And I got two of them hoisting and I got one of them dropping. And I guess a couple things I just wanted to point out as we watch this. And this was at the end of the day after they've been going all day long. I just want you to watch as they go into the top mark, just like all the books say, the vang is eased, the main goes way out, the jib stays in tight to pull the bow down. One other thing that I think is really important that we see sometimes as we round the mark, look how flat they are. You might even argue right there, they're heeled to weather a little bit. So when the spinnaker fills, the boat's balanced and it's ready to take off on a plane. So that's cool. Now, we all know that's easier said than done, but this is what we aspire to do because when you watch what happens here, the boat's flat, the main is still under vanged, the boat takes off on a plane. Now the vang comes on and everybody gets in their position. But the boat was balanced, the sails turned it down, so they didn't give up much distance to weather, I guess you'd say, and it really was good. Now here's another shot, not the same one, obviously. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, this is them going around the top mark again. Same deal here. There goes a vang off, the jib stays in. And the reason I wanted to put this shot in was how important I think this, and I've heard other classes call it the schwabble. I don't have any idea where that came from. But when you go around the top mark and the chute is being hoisted to turn down a little bit, let the boat heel to weather like we see Surge is doing here. The chute goes up, fills, and then they turn back up to their course. Just was cool to see the things that were important: vang off, boat flat, boat balanced, turn down a little bit, and then tear off downwind. Now I see Taylor, I see Victor, I see Lee Sackett, I see a lot of really good sailors here that I would love to have comment on this. And unfortunately right now, the way my screen's set up, I can't see you guys at all. So all I see is a video now. So Ed, if you guys, you know, if somebody wants to say something, I would really love to have them jump in here. Anybody that would love to make a point here. Victor, I'm going to pick on you. What do you think here when you hoist? Tell me what you guys key on, because you guys had a bunch of good hoists today too. You and Pam.
Hey guys, how's it going? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I think you nailed all the great points. I think it's really important to ease the vang so the boat can bear away the top mark. And before easing the vang, I also think it's very important to ease the Cunningham and leave the Cunningham uncleated. So it has a chance to suck back up the mast and the sail he's ready to set up downwind. I think, you know, a common mistake is to go around the mark with the Cunningham pegged, and when you ease the vang and bear away, then the top bands are inverted, and that's not very fast. So just Cunningham off, then vang off, and I like how Surge did it, where they bore away with a little bit of windward heel, and then they headed up to fill the kite. I thought that was great.
So Victor, when you're doing like your final approach to the top mark, you blow the Cunningham when you're basically across from it or whatever, so that when the vang's off, the Cunningham's already gone. Huh?
Yes, I like to ease the Cunningham while the mast is still bent. So then when the mast goes straight, the sail can get sucked up. And he
okay.
never gets any, you know, inversion on the top from tension on the luff.
Cool, cool. Well, let me go downwind now, and it just so happens to be Surge again coming in. It was thumping at the end here, obviously, and he's coming in dead downwind, drops it to a leeward windward here, kind of. But what I thought was valuable here, well, just first thing I would say is pretty basic, is they do it enough ahead of time that when they get into the turn around the mark, to the mark, the chute is pretty much down. The only other thing I want to point out here is the boat heels, but not out of control, you know, and obviously the jib is eased here, but if you think about it, at this point, as the boat's struggling to make it up to the wind, the main's out. If the jib was trimmed in hard, which is easy to do, you know, in this situation, if the main's still out, it'll pull the bow down away from the close hauled course. So there it comes in, and the boat's balanced as they head up. So I thought that was pretty neat. What, anything anybody wants to add on that one? You know, seriously, please feel free. This is, now I'm going to get into some tactical stuff. Let me stop it. Taylor, will you respond to this? Because somebody, before we had this debrief set up, asked some questions about how do you get to the top mark in a big fleet? You know, obviously it's challenging, and here's kind of an example of what it would look like in a big fleet at the top mark. And interestingly enough, here's Bruno on port coming in, you know, clear ahead, and to the left in the splash of water on my lens is John Heaton. And you can see John overstood the weather mark by a fair bit. And that would, it seemed to me, be important so that nobody could get to him and step on him as he goes into the mark, as we see some of the other boats to leeward of him, you know, or leeward of his line. So anyway, they did a real nice job here. So Taylor, can you talk about this? We talked a little bit with the gang, the bottom third, maybe the middle third, but the top third is when it gets to be a little more committed, right? So do you mind jumping on, Taylor, and giving your?
No, not at all. Can you guys hear me? Audio okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, it's always a tricky one. And you know, the bigger the fleet, the harder this gets. Your approach to the top mark is always harder as you get more and more boats. And it's always harder on your first beat. You know, given that we were only doing one beat today, it's very congested at the top. So, you know, for me, I think one of the big things that I learned from actually sailing with Bill Hardesty in the Etchells, you know, in a 90+ boat fleet and at the Newport World was, you know, trying not to get out to the starboard ley line too early, but also not, you know, approaching the windward mark on port too late. So, you know, I think we tried to enter kind of that starboard tack ley line anywhere in a big fleet, like a 96 boat fleet. I think we tried to enter the starboard tack ley line anywhere from like, you know, 9 to 15 lengths out. And for me, there's huge gains to be made. You know, I think if you get to the starboard tack ley line too early, you can end up overstanding a lot, or, you know, it's sitting in bad air all the way in. Whereas, you know, if you come into the starboard tack ley line too late on port tack, you know, you're opening up the door for a lot of, you know, potential issues at the top mark with starboard tackers coming in and not being able to find a hole. So, Yeah, I think it's just about kind of looking around and fleet management and really picking your point to enter that starboard tack ley line is a huge part of it. But again, I think as you know, as the race goes on, you know, second beat, you can start to push that port tack ley line a little bit more. But you know, I think a lot of people forget to, you know, really pay attention to the shifts at the top of the beat as well. In a venue like this, it's so important when it's super shifty and puffy like it was today, that you really have to, you know, play a tactical game all the way into that top mark. And, you know, you can oftentimes gain, you know, 7 to 10 boats within the, you know, the last like sixth of the beat, I'd like to say, just by, you know, hitting a few good shifts and staying in pressure.
That's good. Do you make a decision as you enter that top third, Taylor, where you want to get off to a particular side? I mean, do you kind of look and see which side seems maybe the least congested, or maybe there's more breeze or less current or whatever it is? Do you then work yourself to that side at that point, or do you still sort of stay in the middle so you're not committed until you get to that 14 length out kind of position?
Yeah, I mean, congestion is definitely a huge part of the game, and sailing in clean lanes at the top of the beat is huge. That's one of the bigger things that I look for, is try to stay in clean air at the top of the racetrack, and just, you know, keep the bow pointing at the mark. Again, I think people get so fixated on, you know, getting out to one of those ley lines that oftentimes, like, there's, you know, today could have been anywhere from 3 to 4 shifts in the last, you know, 2 minutes of the beat. And you know, you get a little bit complacent thinking, oh, I need to, you know, get in line out here on the starboard tack ley line. But really, you know, when it's a shiftier day, I'm happy to take a little bit more risk and try to make those gains and pass those 6 boats, and, you know, maybe have to duck 1 or 2 boats, but, you know, in the end, it's a net positive.
That's great. That's great. Okay. Well, let's keep going. Actually, hold on. I'm going to do this one. This is, hold on. It's a neat shot of Pamela sailing upwind with Victor. The boat's balanced. And it's not the best shot in the world because there's water on the lens and the bow's jumping up, so I apologize. But what I notice a fair bit is that Laura's kind of forced to push the helm down to leeward every once in a while. And the main's breaking up in the big puffs. But I notice that and I like it, frankly, that Victor has a fair bit of depth in the bottom of the jib. It's twisted, nice and open, and the boat looks really balanced. And it looks, I don't want to say easy, but it's not fragile to steer. And Victor, anything quick you want to add to that? Tell us what you're seeing there and what you're feeling as far as the balance.
I think you mentioned some good points, Greg. It's really important to have the boat balance in order to make it easy to drive or comfortable to drive. And a common thing that happens when it's so windy is that the jib gets very powerful because the head stays sagging and the main starts breaking up, and then you get the lee helm, which we even have a little bit of lee helm in this video, but it's not so much that it's hard to tolerate. So if the main is breaking, then we consider going tighter on the rig so we can put more backstay on and get a tighter head stay. And you know, if that's not enough and we're at the top of a rig setting like we were today, then every time the main breaks, Patrick did a really great job at easing the in-hauler.
Okay. Getting rid of the lower leach so it opens up the...
Yeah, and that really helps when, you know, every time the main starts breaking, Patrick's really quick on the in-hauler, and that helps the main to settle, and then the boat wants to head up again. Because every time the main breaks, the boat wants to bear away, so it gets even more powered up and you get more heel. So it's a downward spiral. So whatever you got to do to keep the boat tracking forward and wanting to go straight, whether it's to ease the in-hauler on the huge puffs, you know, if it's a common theme, then you might have to go tighter on the rig so you can get a flatter rig. When you go tighter on the rig, what you do is you make the rig stiffer. So when you put the backstay on, instead of bending the rig so much, what you're doing is you're actually tightening the head stay. So that's the advantage of having a tighter rig, that you get a tighter head stay and therefore a flatter jib.
And then it's easier to balance against the main when it starts to break up, and it won't break up as much because the jib is flatter and a little more open as well, right? So,
Exactly, yeah. Every
Yeah.
time the head stay sags to leeward, makes the leech of the jib rotate towards the main. So it gives the main more backwind or bad air, however you want to call it. So if you can get a tight head stay, then the leech's more open, like you're saying.
cool. Okay.
Hey, Greg, this is Kristen Berry here.
Yeah, Kristen.
While we've got Victor on there for a second, I've got a question. Looks like the Traveler's pretty low here. Do you think that you can eliminate some of that lee helm by sneaking the Traveler to windward and still not tipping the boat over too much? Or will that just shut the main down too much here? Just looking from this shot, it looks like Pamela's pushing to leeward quite a bit. And obviously sheeting on the main probably increases the heel too much. But if you snuck the Traveler up a little bit, could you get away with that or no?
Oh, is that a question for Greg or me?
No,
That's for Victor. Yeah,
Oh,
for Victor.
You know what? It might be something worth trying. The way I think about it is I always have to have a certain amount of tension on the main. If it's really easy to play, meaning that I don't have a lot of tension, I usually put the Traveler down. And if it's really hard to play, that when I ease on a puff, the thing wants to yank my hand, that's hard to be accurate, then I put the Traveler up. And it felt like the right amount of tension for my liking was with the Traveler kind of in the middle, which I also think helps get the head stay tight if you have a little more main sheet tension. But that's not to say that it could be better to have it a little bit higher. You know,
Pretty flat.
often if it's choppy, having twist is a good thing because it frees the boat up. But I tried it higher, I tried it lower, and it felt best to me at that height.
Got it. Thank
That
you.
said, it doesn't mean I'm right. You know, there might be a better way to do it out there. I wonder what Lucas was doing and what Taylor was doing. They were going quite fast out there. So do you guys want to share where you had the Traveler?
Yeah, Lucas, are you able to unmute?
Hey guys, I don't know if you can hear me very well. I'm actually in a restaurant.
Well,
But yeah, so basically like Victor was saying, the only time I actually try to bring it up a bit is when boat gets really tippy and really hard to steer because it gets really choppy or it's, you know, unstable breeze. And that's when I go just a little bit higher on the trap, a little less main sheet, and you know, a little bit less in-haul to counteract for that backwinding and for that jib sag that you may get. But then I feel like having the main sheet as tight as you can is pretty good for the reasons that Victor was just mentioning, trying to keep the head stay tight.
Gotcha. And what if you have the Traveler underneath the boom, then it's more vertical and obviously pulling down more, so you have more load on the head stay, right?
Yeah, well, you're just able to carry more main sheet tension.
Yep.
So, but there's a point that where the boat gets really hard to steer, and then that means that you probably went too far, and you gotta go back up with the Traveler and just use the main sheet again.
Gotcha.
So basically, when the water's flatter and the wind's steadier and flatter, you can get away with more main sheet tension and a little bit lower Traveler. But when it gets kind of tricky and very, very shifty and choppy or bad air comes or whatever, then you gotta go up a bit with the Traveler and a little bit less main sheet. That's my way of doing it.
Gotcha. Good. Okay. Well, let's move on. We're going to do a tack here. This is John Heaton doing a tack. And I wanted to put this in. And again, we got the water on the lens. We got the bow of the boat. So I apologize. But what I wanted to point out is how much Zeke eased the main here to keep the boat balanced, you know? And what I'm saying balanced here is not just heeling over, but lots of times, and it doesn't matter if it's a J70, it can be any kind of a boat. We come out of attack here. We all know where the jib's supposed to be, right? We know where on the spreader the leech is supposed to be, what the telltales are doing and all that. And especially when we're coming out of attack, but we sometimes are going by feel with the main sheet. And really what we're trying to do is balance the helm at this point with the main trim to what the jib is doing as far as load or balance. So we got the jib eased, so the main has to be eased a lot. And look what Zeke's done here to balance this boat. And once it's going back up to speed and John's got it back up, the jib comes back in, the weather sheet comes on, then Zeke trims the main back in. And I know there's so many different ways to look at that, but I just think, you know, sometimes we come out of tacks and we can't put the bow down. The boat doesn't want to put the bow down, or we come out of the tack and we heel way over. It's kind of nice just to know that a lot of it just comes out of the balance of the main trim and how critical that is. Anybody want to add anything to that? Feel free, please. Well, guys, so this next one is a start, and this is Laura. And by the way, we've shown a video here of Pamela and Laura. I don't know if you guys noticed, I think it was the first race, and you guys would know better, but they rounded 1-2, which I think was really cool. Obviously impressive for them and great for the class. So congrats to you guys. So this is a start, and this is Laura kind of right in the middle, kind of flat, heel to weather a little bit, middle of the line, set up nicely, but it kind of a lot of classic, cool boat handling and tactical stuff going on. We see 42 obviously has a bead on the hole she's created to leeward. John Heaton is bearing away, so they could head in here, but Laura bears off right there, lets the main out, and if you notice, encourages 42 to go above her. Kind of a classic way to defend, and nicely done. There she's bearing off. Once 42 has decided to go to weather, she sticks it back up. The other thing that's impressive right here that I think we'll see really opens up a big hole between her and John to leeward is they do a great job of holding their lane right there and accelerating. Look at the size of the hole. Really an excellent start and great boat handling, gear changing, going through the modes, the whole bit. But I just think it's kind of cool to see the defending things that we all hear about and read about. Really well done. Taylor, do you want to say something about that?
I think they were over in that start.
Oh, were they? Well, okay. Other than that,
I'm kidding. That was a joke.
What are friends for, right?
I think it was all clear, but yeah. Anyways, this is Taylor.
Yeah, right.
We actually worked a lot on it. So I saw Laura in the Melders 24 now, and we haven't worked a lot in the J70s. This is only our second day sailing together in a boat, and it's obviously a lot different. But Laura does a great job knowing how to manage the flow over the foils, and I think, yeah, it's just about working together with, you know, the main trimmer, the jib trimmer, and the helmsman to really like balance the boat to make sure that one, you can, you know, keep flow over the foils, and two, you can accelerate and, you know, not slide sideways as we see a lot in this bigger breeze conditions. So it's a super hard thing to, you know, do right all the time. It changes every time you're trying to accelerate or build or, you know, do a high slow mode. But, you know, I think biggest thing is just like constant dialogue between Laura and I about talking about the mode and, you know, how much slower we can go without losing flow over the foils. And yeah, you know, I think just working on always just trying to keep the minimal amount of speed to keep the foils working. And you see when the jib comes out in this instance that, yeah, the boat doesn't really slide sideways. And that means we had the right amount of flow over the foils to accelerate, you know, in a straight line without having to bear away.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's easy to over trim too early as well, right? And then the boat loads up and again, heels, or even if it's not blowing, the boat will slide sideways if you've overloaded the blades for what the sails are set for, right?
Absolutely. You know, if you get your jib out, you know, you get your jib out and trim it in really hard and your main's not in enough, like obviously the boat's going to want to bear away, and it's, you know, your helmsman's going to be trying to push the tiller up, and, you know, that's the worst case scenario when the helmsman is trying to fight what the sails are trying to get the boat to do. So making sure that, you know, when that jib comes out, you know, making sure that your main is actually drawing, and that it's not going to want the boat to bear away, you know, especially at those down speeds. As soon as you get that jib out, the boat wants to like turn down immediately. as we saw, just even sailing in a straight line at full speed, these boats often get some lee helm. So it just is, drastically, it's just even exponentially more that case when you're going at slow speeds.
Good point. Good point. Okay, let's look. We'll do a little bit more boat speed stuff here. This is Bruno going upwind. He does have his Traveler a little bit more to weather. I don't know if it's as breezy here because the main's not broken up, but I just thought this was a good shot because if you look carefully, and on my screen, I can't see it as well as I'd like. There's a little bit of overbend wrinkle right below the lower stripe, showing that the mast is bent. There it is. You can see it below the spreader a little bit. It's got a little bit of overbend in the mast, which comes from, it seems to me, proper tuning, the relationship to the uppers or the lowers. He's got a fair bit of weather sheet on, so the jib is powerful enough. And I think I heard all three of you guys, Lucas, Taylor, and Victor, talk about the boat being easy to steer, or having a mode that it's easy to handle, and having a jib that's deep enough with twists seems like that'd be really important to me. The only thing I would ask you guys here, I look at the outhaul being super tight, and I just wonder if in this situation, you'd want the outhaul so tight that the bottom of the leach of the main is pretty straight. I just was wondering, if you look at some of the boats, even the weather here of Bruno, they have a little bit more ease on the outhaul and a little more return on the back end. Anything? What do you guys think on that? Does that make sense? Okay, well, I'm going to move on then. We're going to do, let's do, now this is Laura Downwind. Another great shot of the boat being balanced. You can see Taylor playing the main a lot, obviously. But I guess what I wanted to point out here is how balanced the boat is. And the tiller is rarely pulled to weather off center line, which obviously slows the boat down. And we get into a jibe here that I wanted to mention and let them talk about too. But the other thing that is interesting here is the vang is eased to the point where the upper leach is basically matching the upper leach of the spinnaker. So again, we've got like the symmetrical slot that we talk about with the main and the jib, and they've got the vang set that makes, again, the boat easier to steer. The power is nice. The boat looks good. The balance is good. And they do they are forced here to do a quick, or at least this is what I would call it, a quick escape jibe, where they have to power the boat through the jibe quickly to kind of get a jump on, and I forget who this is to weather, but they do a nice job getting it through. It's not easy to jibe like that. But what I wanted to point out here, if we look back, oh, here we go. Okay, go back to these guys up to weather, where they're able to make a little slower jibe. And I'm sorry, this is all I got to show to weather, but the spinnaker is all the way through to the leeward side before the boom has come across. So when the boat jibes, the boom comes across, the spinnaker is eased and able to fill on the boat to take off on a plane, or is unloaded and able to steer nicely. And that's, when you can jibe at your leisure, it's a lot easier to pull that off. So that's as much a tactical consideration as anything on that. So you guys want to mention what you think about that? Because those are two very different jibes that you have to be able to utilize and master, right? Anybody want to mention that?
I'll talk about it a little bit, Greg. And
yeah,
this is Taylor speaking again. And, we've been, again, we haven't really done much sailing together in the J70. Obviously, I have Scott Ewing a lot, who's, trimming the kite. But, we were doing blow through jibes all day. I don't think we did one pull around jibe. And a lot of people think that that's maybe like a higher risk jibe to do in the bigger breeze. But, I think if you can kind of nail that angle and basically stop the turn when the kite starts to backwind against the jib, I think the blow through jibes can be really effective, and the boat can hop out of the water. This probably wasn't one of our worst jibes today, but I'd be interested to hear if anyone else on the fleet was doing blow through jibes today, because we had some like killer jibes where the boat, you know, felt like almost didn't even get off the plane a few times through the jibes. But I think the key to it though is like making sure that you get enough down pressure on the leech. And that's actually my job on the boat, is to cross the boat and pull down on the leech as Scott trims the kite in. And just get the kite to basically, you know, flap against the jib and the rig, and then just blow through the slot as quick as possible and take up that sheet, which Scott does a great job doing.
Oh, there you are, right there, right, Taylor, you have your hand on holding the leech down at this point, right? That's
yeah. As soon as you get to like dead downwind, like basically just giving the new sheet like a big yank down and trying to get it to, you know, collapse and again go against the rig and the jib. But I don't know, for us it seemed like the blow throughs were going well today, and in those conditions, you know, it wasn't crazy unmanageable, I don't think, breeze wise to not be able to do it. And again, not a great jibe on our part, but for the most part it seemed like it was working well today.
Yeah, okay, cool.
I don't know if anyone else was doing blow throughs. It'd be good to hear their input from it. Willem is obviously really experienced in this class and has probably done more jibes in these boats than anyone in all conditions. So I don't know if he's on the call with Vic or what, but let's hear from him if he's around.
Yeah. Willem, are you or any of your gang on?
Hello, fellas. This is Willem.
Yeah, this is Willem here. There's you know, there is high risk sometimes by you come out a little too high. You got 10 guys heckling me here, but if you come out a little too high, or the main sheet flips around the winch, which could happen, or you know, there's a few different ways that you can wipe out. So I was talking about this with Patrick Wilson. You know, we like to just roll the jib up, do a nice. The kite seems to pop a little earlier with the jib rolled up, and then as soon as the driver's a little more comfortable because he doesn't have to turn through so many degrees, and then we roll the jib out and head up. As we're heading up and getting back onto a plane, we roll the jib out. So there's a few different ways you can do it. I think this works better, the blow through in a VX or a Melgus 24 or Melgus 20, because the spinnaker is bigger than the, you know, in comparison to the jib, the spinnaker is bigger. So I think by kind of going old school, rolling the jib up, accomplishing the jibe, and then heading up and rolling the jib out back onto a plane is pretty safe. So bigger, as the fleet gets bigger, and maybe on the first run, being safe has its advantages. So
yeah, well, there certainly was a lot to be said for that today. Yeah.
That being said, I think a lot of drivers are turning too slow, and then they come out too safe, and then it takes too long to head up, where with Taylor, maybe in some of those blow throughs, he's making it work. But maybe if he got a big puff at the wrong time, or the main sheet caught on a winch, he'd wipe out. So
yeah. Okay.
Quite possibly. No wipeouts today, knock on wood.
So you were pumping the main a lot, Taylor, more than one per wave.
Oh,
Oh
my God. Don't even start.
You're kind of pushing the limit there, pal. Kind of pushing.
I'm trimming the main to the conditions at all times.
Well, just watch that tomorrow.
I call it trimming.
All right, as we move along here, you guys. So we mentioned that we have a drone that Roy has done a lot of good stuff with, and unfortunately we didn't get it working for the whole day today. This is a pretty cool tack of Laura and Taylor, of course. I think this is from yesterday, I believe. But it's a nice tack, and you can see Taylor working the main here and how it gets eased just at the right time and the boat balances. You know, the part that I think is really impressive and important is right at this point, the tiller basically stays right down the center, you know, and we're obviously off to starboard a little bit, so it looks like it's to leeward, but I think it's impressive how balanced that boat was when it first came out. But we wanted to stick this in because we're going to see more of this good drone stuff that Roy's going to have for us. So that's good. And I got one more here I wanted to show you guys. And again, let you guys talk about some trim and tuning stuff, and it happens to be of Laura again. And we will get more of everybody tomorrow. I went through the video, and unfortunately, these were the ones that had the least water on the lens, so I apologize. But this is a good shot. I think, you know, I mentioned the outhaul, and I kind of thought that that was important, not to have the outhaul too tight. And this is certainly not too tight, but you can see the return in the lower leach there. You can see the overbend wrinkles. On my screen, I'm having a hard time, but I think somebody said they could see them okay. But this is telling you that the mast is bending properly. You know what's interesting here, you guys, and I want to ask you guys a tuning question. Okay, as we go upwind here, we see the leeward upper is really banging around. You know, so the rig's loose enough, you can see it there. Is that any kind of a guide to you guys that you would want to go up another step to tighten the rig, or is that just the way it is when it's breezy and the lowers are on as hard as they have to be? Victor, can you take that one? And then Willem, would you take that one after Victor?
Hey, Greg, Victor here. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
What I think, the way I think about it is I like the tip to fall off to leeward a little bit relative to the middle of the mast. So if I look up the mast, I see the tip to leeward of the spreaders, the tip of the mast. And that's why I'm happy to have the leeward shroud dangling. That means the tip is to leeward. And if you sight it, that's what you will see. What I think it does is that it opens up the mid leach and decreases the return on the mid leach of the sail. And just less drag. Anyway, maybe Willem can share what he thinks.
Depending on how tight that course tune backstay is, it's going to give the illusion of potentially looser caps. So sometimes you might look at our boat, say, and we have a little tighter on the course tune. Carlos has got the backstay pulled as hard as he can, and it looks looser, but my bet is our forestay is tighter because our rig is tighter than some boats that maybe have a different system, that don't pull it as tight, that don't pull as hard on the fine tune. And all of a sudden we look at two boats and we say, oh, that boat has a looser rig. And all we're looking at is the leeward caps, when really we need to be looking more at the forestay and the jib. So.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. That's a good point. And what you're saying is you start off with the rig at the right spot. So when you really hit the backstay hard, which you're going to do for the main and for the headstay, you are really going to straighten the headstay more than if you had a much tighter rig and a little bit less backstay, for example, right? Is that,
no, can I translate what he's saying, Greg? He's saying that if you have a loose rig, he's saying that if you have a looser rig, but you have less backstay, it might look like you have a tighter rig because the leeward shroud is not dangling. But if you have a really tight rig, but you put a ton of backstay, it's still going to dangle a lot. So it might give you the impression that the rig is loose because it has a lot of dangle. But the reality is that the rig is really tight, but the backstay is just so tight that makes the leeward shroud dangle more.
And you're going to have as much load on the headstay to straighten
way much
that.
more load. Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha. That's impressive. That's good stuff.
So here's a trick. I'll just share to everyone. That's the way I know that I have the rig tight enough is that I have to pull with two hands on the backstay and squat it. And keep in mind, I'm a pretty big guy that's really strong. I have to pull the backstay with two hands and pretty much squat it in order to overbend the main. If it's easier than that to overbend, then I know that my rig is too loose.
Yeah, this is Taylor. I agree with that. You should have absolutely been pulling as hard as you can with two hands to get the rig to overbend. And that's a good indicator that your rig is tight enough and that you're going to have enough headstay tension for the amount of breeze, especially in the flatter water.
That's good. Good.
And so once that V gets really low, it's no longer doing anything. If the course tune backstay is like on probably a quarter or a third of these boats, the course tune backstay is too loose. We pull on the backstay and the V gets lower and lower. like I'm looking at Taylor's boat here, maybe he could have gotten a little more on the course tune, because if that gets any lower, he's really just, he's not doing much when he
Yeah.
pulls tighter on the fine
I
tune.
agree with that. I think Taylor doesn't have enough backstay there either.
Gotcha.
Whatever you guys want.
On Taylor, but once it gets anything lower than that, it's probably too loose. He's borderline, and it's not even that doesn't look like the biggest puff of the day, so he's probably borderline too
Yeah,
loose
that
on
does
the
look too loose.
course tune.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Thanks for the advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Appreciate it,
good
guys.
stuff.
Yeah.
He's just not as strong as you think.
Well, this is good, you guys. That's what I had. I had some other video that I was hoping, Victor, I talked about, actually, I'm going to ask you to talk about that start, Victor, because I told you I had the perfect video of you guys lined up. And unfortunately, it was all covered with water, and I didn't realize that. But
Hey,
I
Greg.
just want, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Greg, this is Mike Ingham here. I want to go back to this video you're showing right now. And you talked about the outhaul being on Taylor's boat there being just a little bit loose. You see how there's a little bit of shape in the bottom. I saw a lot of boats that were, they're like, hey, it's windy. Let's really pull the outhaul and let's really, move the leads back and get everything flat. And I think you need some shape. If you're twisting because it's choppy and it's windy and you're losing the top of your sails, there still has to be some power down low to get through something. Anybody have any comments on that?
Yeah.
I think you're exactly right, Mike. For instance, when you sail a laser in the heavy wind, you always see the lasers with the sails really flat and the Van crank, the Cunningham crank, but they always have the outhaul pretty loose. And every time I sail these boats, I kind of think of that. Even though it's really windy, I'm gonna go laser style, make sure that I have some power down low. So I have some drive forward to pass the waves, and because the top of the sails, like Mike said, are luffing most of the time, so.
Right, if you're losing the leeches, you gotta have something to go on. I think the wavier it is, the more important that is. But I also think that sort of matches the jib, right? Like if it's the same thing on the jib, you have to have the leads a little forward on the jib too, to have a little shape if you want that, and the outhaul out. And I think the Vang does that too. If the Vang's too tight, you over flatten the bottom of the main also.
Mhm. Good point. Good point.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. This is Taylor again, and just this was early in the day. This is like before the racing, so it's probably the lowest wind that we saw for the day. I think we did come on our outhaul a little bit later on, but yeah, I agree that they should have a little bit of drive down low, and you can always get rid of some of that power easily, like pulling a little bit more Vang on, pushing the boom into the bottom of the rig will flatten out the bottom of the main, and you can get rid of power that way if you need as well. So. But for the most part, yeah, just a little bit more drive down low felt like it helped the boat accelerate when needed.
You know what I've kind of tried to use as a guide for knowing if I've overbaked the outhaul, you guys. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but what I always like to see is the main as it comes down to the foot is a smooth, consistent shape. And if you overbake the outhaul, like where the window is here, you invert the main at this point. And then that really over flattens the lower leach and takes what return might be there out. So I kind of always try to just look, and if the main is flat because we've got enough bend, the back stays on, the rig set up properly, then the outhaul shape will match because we'll have to pull the outhaul tighter to keep that from looking too deep down low and that curve from getting too round. Does that make sense? It's just kind of interesting. If this gets a divot in it right here below the window, that kind of has always been a guide for me that we've overdone the outhaul.
Greg, I saw a lot of boats today that had that divot.
Yeah.
They thought it was windy, so they cranked the outhaul and they lost all their drive in the bottom part of their sail.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
Hey, I got a question for you guys on the Vang on that. I think the Vang really bends the lower part. How do you know how hard to pull on the Vang in this stuff?
Hey guys, this is Victor here. I don't like pulling it too much, Mike, because I think when I bend the mast gets shorter and the headstay gets softer. So I pretty much trim the main to my max trim, and then I take the slack out, and that's the most I'll do. And if it's windier than that, I'll leave it uncleated. So when the main, when I ease the main, it twists and doesn't kick. So I like having the van quite soft.
Yeah, this is Taylor. We're very similar. We'll basically, you know, as your backstay comes on, your vang is going to get, you know, more and more slack. But taking same thing, we basically just take the slack out and then sometimes maybe go like an inch or so past that, but not much more.
So what I saw is that if somebody put the backstay on too much, the overbend wrinkles were kind of in the middle of the sail. And if the vang was on too hard, the overbend wrinkles are at the bottom of the sail.
Absolutely.
So,
You definitely see the overbend wrinkles start to slide down the rig as you.
right, if they're sliding down the rig, you probably had your vang on too tight.
Yeah, likely.
Yeah.
But again, taking the slack out is great because it just gives you, you know, you're not completely spilling the entire leach of your main as you ease the main sheet, which you needed to be playing the main sheet really actively today in the puffs. And yeah, that's a huge part of it, is just making sure that you're not going to lose all your leach on your main and all the power as you and get too twisty and too draggy as you use that main sheet.
I thought that was an interesting description you had, Victor, about feeling the pressure on the main sheet, you know, if it was too light. And I think Lucas concurred with that too, you know, what that meant to you. And if you overdid the vang, you certainly wouldn't have that sense, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the van starts taking the up and down load, and then the only load you would have is this outboard load. So like I said, you know, I am not huge into having the tight vangs, so I wouldn't even know how different it felt on my hand, but I think the vang hurts the head stay tension. When you put the vang on, it powers up the jib because it makes the head stay soft. So I usually don't sail with much vang when it's windy.
Gotcha. Well, good. Well, you guys, those are the videos I had for tonight. And I was starting to talk about Victor and their team had a great weather end start. And unfortunately that video had water all over the lens. So, but I think we're just about at an hour or 55 minutes. And, you know, if anybody else has other questions while we got this group on here, and by the way, to have you guys share your knowledge and be willing to share your knowledge is really cool and helpful. And I know I learned a ton, and I'm sure everybody did. So thanks for taking the time to do that. And if you guys have anything else you want to add, and Mike, if you have anything else you want to add, any questions as well, you know, this is great. And we'll do more of this tomorrow. And like we say, we'll have more drone stuff too to look at.
Hey, Greg, I think you did a great job. I want to say thank you for putting this together and getting all of us here and encouraging us to participate. This is great, sharing with everyone and having all the good sailors sharing and newer people learning. This is really cool. So thanks for putting it together, Greg. This is Victor.
Well, it's good. Well, you guys made it happen, and thanks for taking the time. You know, that means a lot to the class and to the gang that's here. So we'll do more of this, you guys. And Ed, if there aren't any other questions in the chat room, you know, we could call it a night. And by the way, if anybody has anything specific they want us to look at tomorrow or take video of or pictures of, and we can share it in the Zoom tomorrow night, or if you'd rather we just send it to you, we're happy to do that as well. And we could actually have, you know, Lucas, Victor, or Taylor take a peek at it too. So, you know, but we're here just to help any way we can. And it's cool that these guys are too. And any questions, Ed?
Thanks to Ed for organizing all this. I know he's put in a lot of hard work to make it happen, but also, is there any value of getting some still shots of just some, you know, from behind sail setups? And I don't know if anyone has a Dropbox. I know I do, that I could happily upload and share via Dropbox, so everyone can kind of see some more photos of just setups of mains and jibs. And I don't know, something that we could think about for the future, because I know that is definitely helpful, you know, for me especially to see comparisons to different people, and knowing boats that went well today and seeing how they were set up would be awesome.
Well, we'll do that tomorrow, Taylor. That's a good idea. It'll be a little bit lighter, right? So it'll be a little bit easier to get, you know, cleaner shots and all that. So we'll do that. We'll get a good pile of those and we can look through them and we can go through them as fast as we want, or we can dissect them too, which would be cool if you guys don't mind helping with that.
Happy to help. Thanks, Greg.
That's cool. Well, thank you guys. Well, thanks everybody.
Well, and to wrap it up, I'll be here. And, you know, one of the goals is to kind of create, you know, these different Zooms now, and then a Tuesday Zoom, which gives them more. And then what we've talked about doing is taking that information that, you know, Taylor's asking for and hopefully everyone is asking for, and creating another thing very a week later that'll have maybe some more things that have examples. So kind of we'll try to create a library, you know, to help you guys out, especially the different conditions. And so, you know, the more you guys participate in this, the more we all can, you know, get better and have the ability for this. This is just hugely important. And it doesn't have everybody jumping in and sharing. Also, people know, and I'll share this, we are recording these and we will put these on YouTube channel. So if anyone wants to back or you want to share it with someone, you know, they don't have to be here, you know, to learn from this. They could be in, you know, another country even. So, you know, create more info and just have more fun on the water. So I want to thank everybody because it is a group for the fleet doing this, and that's why it's happening, buddy. And we'll have some more good things tomorrow. We will not have a debrief until Tuesday. That'll be a debrief. Post all that. Keep sharing more. You know how to get online, and then feel free to ask me anything. Don't forget about the get data to get your Velocitech to Kristen, and then we will get some of the data order people so I will have a couple people I know of that I want to get these to for tomorrow and the next day. But you can always just literally hand your Velocitech to Kristen today, tomorrow. So it's really powerful. It just helps everyone get better. And thank you, everybody. And looking forward to 2 greats on the water. And then we'll have February as well, be 4 days on the water. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Ed.